welcome to Jophiel Whispers. My name is Nairi. I've spoken to you quite a bit about spiritual matters, going back to the mystery schools of ancient Greece, which of course go all the way back to Egypt. I've talked about some personal experiences. There's a reason I've called this series Knowledge, Wisdom, Spirituality and Empowerment, because the world is so troubled right now, and anyone out there who's been paying attention will be realizing that the world as we have understood it is not what we thought it was. And there's so much conflicting information out there. It's very easy to get caught up in narratives that are not true. And yet, on the other hand, we need to know what really is going on for our own future, for our own welfare. So I could just talk to you about spirituality, but I felt a more interesting way, hopefully for you, would be to read you the first chapter of my book, Jophiel Whispers, for two reasons. Firstly, because you'd be able to see how my connection to the non-material world plays out in my own life, but also because it was after writing the book that I realised I could contribute something to the collective wisdom based on a long life of experience. I'm in my 70s, and that it was something I was meant to be doing. And I hope after listening to it, you will understand why. If you've already read chapter 1, or if you've already read the book, you probably don't want to continue with me for today, and that's fine. I hope to catch up with you next time. In the meantime, stay well, stay blessed. For those of you who stay, the book is basically an autobiography, but it's more than that, because it's not about what I've done and what I've achieved. It's about what I've experienced and what I've perceived. And you know, our perception about the world changes and evolves as we age. And a lot of young people don't realise how much wisdom older people have, because we've literally run the gauntlet. We have experienced so much in our lives that we do, most of us at our age, at my age, do have some kind of wisdom to be shared, and that hopefully we can share in such a way that it will be helpful for younger people. So here we go. I'm going to read you chapter 1 of Jophiel Whispers. Egypt. My house is built on an ancient graveyard, or so I've been told. I didn't know. I was given this information only yesterday by an Egyptian seer and spiritualist who is in touch with the hidden energies of this land of his birth. I would never have shown such disrespect for the souls of past lives by embracing this large structure with so much creativity, excitement, and love for our new land. He told me the house found me, not the other way round, so I should love it and embrace it. I'm meant to be living there. That's nice to know, but I deeply apologise. Ignorance is no excuse, however, and in Egypt such things are not to be taken lightly. Spirit is a constant presence here, and to offend the ancestors is to invite trouble. The seer tells me there's probably a past life connection, that my soul connections go back to the pharaonic era, and there's possibly some negative karma surrounding it. And I'm sure you're thinking, well, I've heard that before, but let me go on. I believe him. I already felt that deeply in my soul when I first arrived here. Nevertheless, I must be careful not to get caught up in the excitement of such a scenario, which taps into my ego and my innate sense of drama, and remind myself to approach it with appropriate, unaccustomed, and genuine humility. This could be a very serious matter. It's a beautiful house, but I can't live there. I won't live there. A few weeks after we moved in, I began to feel as though I was being attacked in a way I can't explain, on an energetic level rather than something physical. The appearance of 5 dead sparrows and 2 live scorpions in my bedroom wasn't a good omen, and even though it's built in a quiet area, we were suddenly surrounded by appalling noise from the neighbouring house within a few weeks of moving in. So I'm living elsewhere for the moment, closer to the sacred Nile. Perhaps the place I'm claiming for my own is cursed, or perhaps it's just my imagination, because apart from being annoyed by the noise, my son and daughter don't share my discomfort. My memories of connection to the spirit world go back to when I was quite young, and to share them is to share an essential part of myself and my life journey. The situation with the house is one of those moments worth sharing because the visit by the seer was the result of an interesting and unsolicited encounter with those energies. My daughter and I had a practice of asking for permission from the Indigenous ancestors to enter sacred spaces back in Australia, and felt we had neglected to acknowledge them here. We decided to do some energetic balances, a combination of healing tools my daughter had explored, including Psyche and some other spiritual techniques, in order to clear possible negative energies, if they were present, and for the highest good. We devised a set of commands and affirmations which seemed appropriate and commenced the exercises. We closed our eyes and began the first balance, but before we had completed it, I suddenly felt a presence standing next to me, a very dense but not malevolent masculine energy. I sensed it had placed itself at such close proximity in order to attract my attention. We immediately stopped the balance. My daughter then instructed me to ask the entity a few questions, which I did while our eyes remained closed. The first question was, "Who are you?" I heard no words, but the energy had moved to a chair close by, and I saw in my mind's eye, which is how these energies appear to me, a three-dimensional image of Ibis-headed Thoth, the god of the moon, wisdom, knowledge, writing, science, magic, art and judgment, who is widely depicted in temple paintings and hieroglyphs. Thoth was sitting upright, his arms resting on the armrests of the chair, very regal, emitting no energy, either positive or negative, perfectly still. This was a surprise. We hadn't expected a spirit to appear and had never experienced this before. We thought we were addressing more recent ancestors, perhaps only a few hundred years old. There was no response when we asked him why he was there, but when we asked a third question, "Can you let us know what we can do to put this situation in order?" I heard him say in my mind's eye, "You don't know what you are doing. You are wasting your time. We are in a different realm. There is no connection between your realm and ours, so there can be no interaction." This was disheartening and slightly unnerving, which is why we sought help from the Egyptian spiritualist. And there have been so many incidents of negative outcomes for those daring to invade the temples and tombs of ancient Egypt, many of them well known. So this is not to be messed around with, even though it may well be just my imagination. Witness the demise of Lord Carnarvon, the financier of the expedition to locate the tomb of Tutankhamun, who died of blood poisoning from a mosquito bite just 6 weeks after the tomb was first opened for inspection. Witness also the death of Howard Carter's canary, which he found being consumed by a cobra in his home. The cobra was a symbol of sovereignty by the pharaohs, which is evident in the temple hieroglyphs all over Thebes. According to Wikipedia, Egyptian former chief archaeologist Zahi Hawass recalled that as a young man he had once had the responsibility of transporting several artefacts away from the Greco-Roman site Kom Abu Bilo. Apparently, his cousin died on that day while his uncle died on its first anniversary, and on the third anniversary, his aunt died. Coincidence? And I know of, but I don't know the identity of, a female archaeologist here in Luxor who has become very ill since being the first to enter one of the newly opened tombs. I understand her health is not improving, but since she doesn't believe in the non-material realm, she has rejected offers of spiritual assistance. I have been offered help in my situation, which I will accept with the utmost gratitude and respect. Experience has taught me that unseen forces are constantly at work in our lives. To acknowledge and pay attention to them is the key to receiving divine protection and being guided towards a safer, more authentic and chivalrous life. But one must be sure. We all have moments where subtle persuasion overrides common sense. This situation needs to be resolved if I'm to move forward safely, and I'm told the only solution is to request the intervention of an imam who is experienced in these matters. I don't think I need the imam. I'm told he's connected to those energies, but I'm not so sure. The pharaohs belong to a different realm, and the Muslim faith belongs to the near past. I mean my neighbours no harm. I respect them and want to honour them, and I believe they know this too. If I communicate with them, they will understand and protect me in return. But maybe it's not true. Perhaps there are no spirits, even though I do feel some kind of presence. We are close to the Valley of the Kings, after all. The unspoken name is Valley of the Dead, and the hills dividing my house from Tutankhamun's resting place are pockmarked with hundreds, if not thousands, of tombs holding the remains of many souls. I feel their presence, and even if the situation is simply my overactive imagination, it still needs to be addressed. The balances we performed should have been the solution, but perhaps they were the question. This is Egypt, land of mystery and dark secrets. I know my home will become a place of high endeavour and connection to the creative spirit for this community we have joined. It will become a place of healing, sharing, of knowledge, wisdom, creativity, education and companionship. But that's in the future. Other matters need attention first. In October 2022, I was persuaded to move into the house not far from Medinet Habu on the land of ancient Thebes in Luxor. The style is based on traditional Nubian architecture, which is appropriate for the land of the pharaohs, who were probably of Nubian origin. It's a magnificent two-story affair with a large embryonic garden. All who visit admire it. I should love living in this house. I'm an artistic soul, a visual artist, a musician and composer. But instead of stepping into my full creativity in this extraordinary part of the world, I've been struck mute. Creativity has all but ceased, and the 4 months in which I lived there were fraught with anxiety, a sense of filling in empty days, and in the end, that feeling of being under attack. More than 7 decades of experience have taught me nothing that happens to us is accidental, and I know in the depth of my soul that this is an opportunity in my long habitation of this earthly body to resolve some strongly negative karma from an ancient past life, and so it shall be. Most of us alive here today came from here originally, from this civilization, which possibly sprang from the surviving remnants of ancient Atlantis. That's why so many of us are drawn to this country, despite all the uncomfortable and challenging aspects of living here. It feels as though our soul has returned home. I was never attracted to this part of the world, however. Never in my life have I considered it one of the places I must visit before I abandon this earthly body. And yet circumstances conspired to bring me here. I believe it was an act of God. Why else would a 74-year-old woman pack up all her worldly goods and relocate from her home in the southern continent called Australia to the other side of the world, to a place where she had never desired to be, a place she'd never seen? My soul and my guardians know, though. Jophiel whispered in my ear, and I was listening. About 12 months before I left Australia, I painted a large 120 centimetre square mandala in homage to Archangel Jophiel, guardian angel of beauty and wisdom, patron of the arts who connects one with one's higher self and protects the tree of life with the flaming sword of wisdom. She's also the guardian angel who supports Archangel Michael when he goes into battle against evil. An astrologer friend once told me, Jophiel is my guardian angel, and I believe her because those are the qualities I see or wish to see in myself. I need to believe her because when I'm feeling out of touch with the world, I call on the Archangel and she brings me back into my power. As the mandala painting was revealing itself, I came across a beautiful piece of wrapping paper with an ancient Egyptian theme featuring the same colours as those seen in the temples. These happened to match and complement the colours I had chosen for the painting, the predominant colour of which is orange, and its complement, mauve, which is a luscious combination that endows a faintly pulsating energy to the stylized flame-like shapes around the perimeter. The wrapping paper, whose subject matter wasn't important to me at the time, featured Isis and Osiris surrounded by a few symbols of ancient Egypt. I felt compelled to add these figures to the work as a collage without even considering whether there might be a connection between the two gods belonging to ancient Egypt and the archangels belonging to the Christian ethos. I have since found out that according to some sources, Jophiel and Michael are also aspects of Isis and Osiris, which is an interesting coincidence given my ignorance on the matter at the time of its creation. What is most extraordinary about producing this mandala is that I couldn't have anticipated that a little over 2 years later I would be in the land from which the Horus myth sprang. In retrospect, when I decided to come to Egypt, I was merely confirming what had already existed in space-time before I was aware of it. The channeling of something beyond this physical realm whose presence to me is now evident, but about which then I knew nothing. I think my guardians must have known, though. My soul knew. Perhaps Jophiel herself played some part in this unprecedented journey. Or had I created it myself, unknowingly, by simply aligning the images of those energies on the canvas? Now there's food for thought. I had been living here in Luxor for about 3 months before I ventured into one of the temples for the first time. I had made a habit of cycling up to Medinet Harbour, which is about 5 kilometres from the Nile, where I lived at the foot of the mountain range behind which lie the tomb of Tutankhamun and the Valley of the Kings. I would sit on the outdoor patio of the hotel opposite and sketch for 3 or 4 hours on most days. The temple just a stone's throw away. I would include visual aspects of the architecture to create a collage effect while watching, but not entering, what to me felt like sacred space. When I finally did approach the entrance, it was the right time. I walked slowly through the first courtyard, absorbing the hieroglyphic shapes and beautiful colours of the natural pigments that were used on the friezes. Yellow and red ochres, malachite green, azurite, atasamite, jarosite, orpiment, gypsum and carbon, looking for patterns and shapes, taking note of them for future reference. I then passed under the archway graced by the wings of Isis in faded but sweetly harmonious shades and into the second courtyard. I wandered in between the gargantuan palisaded columns to the north side and looked up. The remaining colours on the ceiling were of such magnificent hue they took my breath away, contrasting starkly with the now bare but intricately carved walls and columns supporting them, whose surfaces lacked the protection from the harsh desert sun and sandstorms from which the upper spaces had benefited. How extraordinary that after thousands of years these colours remain. As I moved between the columns, I suddenly felt myself overwhelmed by deep sadness, spontaneous and unanticipated, while sensing I had finally returned to my home only to find it destroyed. I knew then that this was why I'd been brought to Egypt, to find some sort of completion, to know where I came from. So many times in my life when I was troubled and felt disassociated, I'd ask my guides to take me home, and finally, after many long years, they had answered. While I don't believe my earthly home is in Egypt, I do feel a deep connection to that ancient civilization, and I no longer have the need to keep searching. My 2 years in this unique place have certainly been transformational, and now I can move on knowing where I really belong, but not needing to remain here. I've only been to Medinet Habu one more time. I'm not drawn to the ruins of ancient Egypt because somehow I know that the only parts to which I can reach are the areas designated for tourists, and they are not really ancient Egypt. They are only what remains on view to the public. To find the real ancient Egypt requires entering the hidden spaces where its deep and dangerous secrets remain in darkness and silence. Perhaps I will connect with them one day, but not now. I've visited Luxor Temple twice and felt too ill to stay on both occasions, so the energy there is too powerful for me. We're on a different frequency. Karnak Temple on my one visit was full of tourists. It held more stories, but the energy there is also intense. In Habu, I feel some kind of connection. I feel at peace there. Perhaps the problems in my house really were part of that past association. Perhaps I had indeed lived there in a past life, and I had some old karma to be worked through in order to go through some kind of transformation. In October of 2021, during the later days of the coronavirus phenomenon, when Melbourne was in severe lockdown, I was brought to Luxor with my son and daughter through the assistance of an associate of ours who had lived here for many years. It was a sudden and unexpected move. My daughter and I had been on the road in our motorhomes for 6 months, looking for a place to call home for the three of us. Our efforts were in vain, and we all knew we did not want to continue living in Melbourne where we lived. The experience of the palpable fear and irrational behaviour of almost everyone we met, and the subtle implied violence of the controllers during that time, led us to feel we were living in a lunatic asylum, a suffocating atmosphere from which we were desperate to escape. Most people were afraid of a virus. We were afraid of them. My husband had passed over, my dog had passed over, and I was a free agent, needing the support and presence of my small family, but not in the house of ghosts. We had no home to go to and no reason to remain on a continent which none of us felt supported the way in which we wanted to live our lives. All three of us were drawn to reside in the Northern Hemisphere, and this was the moment and the opportunity to make that move. In an instant, the decision was made to leave the country of our birth. When we arrived in Egypt, which was relatively untainted by the situation dominating the collective psyche in other countries, the culture shock and overwhelm on seeing the dust, the ugly buildings and the appalling amount of rubbish everywhere was overridden by a sense of peace and release from the dystopian world we had left behind. We had no doubt we were meant to be here, as we felt safer than we had for over a year, and felt that there must have been a higher reason for our choice, which would reveal itself to us in time. 2 years later, the world is still troubled, but now there are different distractions, albeit generated by the same beast. We are waiting to move on, but the time is still not right. Perhaps in committing my past to paper, recording my long life with all its joys and troubles, adventures and karmic lessons, I'll be able to leave that story behind and discover a new story. one that will sustain me until my bones are too old to contain my soul, and it can be released into the cosmic realm to begin a new adventure and learn a whole new set of lessons within a new form, back in the company of the pharaohs and my ancestors. I hope you enjoyed that reading. I'm not going to say any more on the subject of spirituality today, but in a future video I will certainly talk about it again. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you next time. Until then, stay well, stay blessed.